Welcome everybody to another episode of CEOpen Mic. Today my guest is Paul Dolman-Darrall, a person who calls himself an outsider in iGaming business, yet he's in the business for 10 years, founded one of the most recognizable company in the industry. And as far as I've seen, you have thousands of followers on LinkedIn. So that's not bad for an outsider, right?
Yeah, I guess so. For me, I'm start off controversially, but yeah, I definitely think I'm an outsider. I still feel an outsider. I think the key thing here is I was never in the industry before starting a gambling company. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that immediately makes you an outsider. But I think one of the things that we really underestimated when we started the company was how tight-knit all the networks are in gambling. Yeah, all the differing cliques, all the little differing niches, how money flows through gambling.
Hmm.
And I've never really been in any of those cliques, been in any of those niches, nor have I been in the flow of the money. I wish I was, but nor have I been in the flow of the money. And so it doesn't mean that I don't now understand them. A decade of trying to network and work hard means that I think I know the industry almost backwards today. But yeah, I still feel very much an outsider, and that we survive based on how well we do rather than just who we knew.
So it must have been surprising for you to learn at the very beginning that it doesn't really matter if you go for ICE in London or Sigma in whatever Cape Town, and you actually meet the very same people over there.
Yeah, I go everywhere now, and it's always the same people everywhere, isn't it? It's such a small industry, but
Yes.
I remember going to my first ice, and at my first ice, we didn't know anyone, and trying to get meetings at ice since we've just had it. Try getting meetings as somebody who knows no one, has no connection to the money. Your very first conference that you turn up to. I mean, they genuinely don't come see you, even though actually at our first ice we won best startup. So that didn't open up any doors really.
But that's a very nice thing to put on your wall and be bragging
Yeah,
about it all
long
day long,
long
right?
forgotten, but yes, that's certainly how it started.
So let's get back to the roots. So after all, why did you come up with the idea of funding this kind of a company? Since you were an outsider, I suppose it takes a little time to learn that actually producing games, it's not only doing graphics, it's not only doing some kind of development. That's a lot of business, meetings, networking that you have to do. That's a lot of regulations around it. So, did you know all those things before you actually do it, or
No,
you just
no, not at
no?
all. I mean, like first and foremost, I am a gambler, and I always have been a gambler
Hmm.
from a child. Yeah.
Hmm.
So did I understand gambling? Yes, to a certain extent. Yeah. I had gambled on everything and knew a lot about gambling. And then additionally, I had made quite a bit of money on the stock market from a company called Paddy Power at the time. They were a small, relatively unknown Irish bookmaker. And I originally became an investor in them in 2002. And who knew that they would become the beast that is now called Flutter? I certainly didn't know that, but it means that I did very well from a stock. And I know a lot about a lot. That's probably my skill in life, is to know a lot about a lot and not fear anything.
Hmm.
But no, the reality is that a very large amount of what I needed to learn was learned on the job.
In the early days, was that a game studio that you actually founded, or was it like a couple of? Yeah.
Today, bizarrely, I came across someone who actually has probably done what we originally were trying to do for the first time. Originally, our goal was to kind of create game shows, live game shows. And
Hmm.
we saw this as sort of maybe that it would be like a TV show and it would have thousands and thousands of people taking part. And then in the first year, I think Evolution releases Dreamcatcher. And we're like, yeah, let's give that up. Yeah. And at the exact same time, we just didn't really have the money to go do that. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think we've spent 10 years looking for the right business model for us,
Hmm.
surviving, chasing down small opportunities that keep us alive, releasing differing types of products. But I think we've spent 10 years searching for the right business model rather
Mm-hmm.
than necessarily knowing, yeah, from day one, we're going to do this and we're going to smash it. No,
Mm-hmm.
day one, we were going to do game shows. We don't do any game shows at all. And then we started moving into lottery, and now that's not a big side of our business anymore. 2019, we start doing slots. But we're like, do we really want to do slots? That's maybe not our focus either. And it's only now that we're probably very confident about what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it, and it's an actual attempt at a business model.
So let's look at the path and actually the process of decision making that you followed during all those years. Because fast forward today, I think it's safe to call you a pretty successful in the field. Just to give some numbers, at the moment you hire roughly around what 100 people, more or
Yeah,
less.
we have about 100 people. Interestingly, we don't view ourselves internally as that successful.
Mm-hmm.
We're clearly not a failure because we have 100 people. But I think internally, because we've been chasing the business model, where I'm very obsessed with business models,
Mm-hmm.
and that you must, produce this superior way of producing profit. And I'm obsessed with it. And I don't think today a single penny of our revenue comes from in my head, a successful business model. So that's why we tend to view ourselves as not particularly successful,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a very good idea of where we're going and what we're trying to achieve. So, and certainly that's not necessarily been the case for the last 10 years.
Right, and let's speak not about today, but let's speak about the journey that 10 years. How much of a strategy was involved, and how much was that spontaneous decision making? Like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of doing slots. Let's do something else.
Honestly, we have this internal diagram, yeah,
Hmm.
and I might share it for if you ever write anything on this or put it out there or even put it into the video. We have an internal diagram of every presentation that we've done at ICE,
Hmm.
and what it shows is that we changed our strategy every year. For the first 8 years, maybe
Hmm.
9 years. Every year there's a new presentation, and it's really quite a fundamental shift in let's go try this.
Hmm.
So I would say a lot of our strategy has been constantly changing.
Hmm.
But there is a certain irony to this. When we first started, the company was called GameV, and that was on purpose. The word game and the word V, and that VY is how it's spelled, really was just like a nice round way of spelling that, but it was actually meant to be VIE, Vi, Game
Hmm.
Vi. Yeah, the Vi matters because that's the Latin word to compete. So in our head, the original goal of the company was to produce games that you could compete at. Yeah.
Hmm.
And game shows was one of the thought processes of that. The irony is 10 years later, that is now exactly what we are doing as a company. But the first 8 years was constantly moving away from that company name and away from that original strategy. So I
Hmm.
think we've returned back to exactly what we wanted to do at the very beginning,
Hmm.
because now we have the ability to thrive. But while we were trying to survive, we were changing the strategy every year.
How structured was it? I mean, let me clarify why even I ask these kind of questions. Quite often, I meet people, even game studios, who are on the very early stages of running the company, and I can see like two types of the people here. So one type of a person is usually these are the people who came from big industries like big corporate environments. So before they spend very first money on anything, they create strategy. They create Excel files with KPIs, with the super detailed plans and all that, all that, all that. And that creates, in my opinion, fake, but I mean false safety for them. I mean feeling
Yeah.
of being safe. And then there's the second type, and I'm this kind of person. If I simply like some idea, I just go all in for the idea and I just do it, which then again is a nightmare for my management team because they can never follow me with whatever I have in my mind. And looking because right now I suppose you have to do the things since you hire so many people. But looking back like 8 years ago, you were in the market for some time already. You already knew what doesn't work. So did you change what was the changing of the strategy? That's the most.
Magic balloons. I don't know how I produced magic balloons there, but I just felt it was needed for some reason. Yeah.
That's a new skill
The
that you get.
I'm on an iPad and on an iPad occasionally. I believe if I can do a heart or something, occasionally you can get a heart appearing out on the screen. And
Now it won't work.
I've never been able to work out how you get these things to happen, but just right then I materialized magic balloons in my head. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I kind of I understand why you divide it into these two
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
and I'm going to go and say that they're both nonsense, and that we have a
Okay.
third way.
Okay. Shoot.
The first is a lie. Yeah, you write all the spreadsheets, you write the business plan. It's a lie. We all know it's a lie because here's the truth. If your business succeeds, you will do far better than your business case. And if your business fails, then you won't hit your business case. So the business case is this bizarre in between that probably isn't the reality ever.
Hmm.
Yeah. A really successful business will do far more than its business case will ever imagine. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the second of them, yeah, okay, let's just run with the idea. I have this
Hmm.
mad, crazy vision, and I'm just going to go with it. Well, reality sucks as well. Yeah, you have a certain amount of money. You need to decide how you're going to spend that money.
Hmm.
You have so many design restrictions that even if you don't think you're writing it on a spreadsheet, you are having to constantly think about it all the time. My view of it goes back to something I already said. I believe that this sounds quite weird, maybe slightly controversial. The people don't matter. Yeah. Like, first of all, yeah, like it
That's a
sounds
bold statement.
astonishing to say that,
Uh-huh.
but the people don't matter.
Okay.
The ideas probably don't even matter that much.
Hmm.
They matter a little bit, but not that much. That there is only one thing that matters. Do you have
Execution.
a superior business model? And that is it.
Uh-huh.
If you have a superior business model, so let's take an established company like Coca-Cola or something like that. You can replace all the people and it still works. Yeah. And I'm famed for drinking Coca-Cola. I don't care who the management team is. Yeah. I'm not saying that you can't have better management teams or worse management teams and that they can have an impact on the results, but you
Hmm.
can put idiots in charge of this and it probably still do okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so the business model absolutely matters. So did we spend time on the structured thought process of the business model? 100%. Does that mean you have to write down all the numbers and do all of that lower stuff? No, you do not. And as what our startups trying to do, in my opinion, they are in search of a successful business model.
Hmm.
And very rarely is it the first thing you thought of. Quite often, you're going to snake your way to the actual successful business model. So,
Hmm.
your job as a startup founder is to survive and snake your way to the successful business model.
Hmm.
And you have a successful business model when your margins are producing so much free cash flow, and you can remove yourself because people don't matter, including you as a founder. Yeah.
Hmm.
So you can remove yourself and the business still works fine. You know that you've found a successful business model.
By business model, you don't really mean exact ways of how your company is making money. It's I'm getting the feeling that what you mean is way more than that. Way like organizing the work of your people, defining your role as a founder or CEO, whatever. At some point, am I right?
By that, so there's a guy called Alex Osterwalder,
Hmm.
who writes a number of books on this. His most famous book called Business Model Generation. I didn't particularly use that,
Hmm.
but it's probably it gives us a bit of a guide to giving someone else's description of it. And within that, you are looking at basically how do you flow money through your business is probably the best way of describing it. Yeah.
Okay.
So how does money come in? How does money go out? How do you make enough money from that? How is it protectable? How do you have what they call moats of protection? And that's the bit you're interested in. Yeah. So if you are Costco, let's take Costco. Let's take a totally differing company here for a second. Costco's business model is we're going to sell lots of stuff cheap in bulk, but we're going to charge you membership to access it. And
Yep.
we're going to make all of our profit from the membership. And we're almost going to make no money off the goods at all. We're going to make all of our money off the membership. So we're
Hmm.
going to sell hot dogs for $1.50 with a drink. We're not even going to make money off it. The membership is where we're going to make money. Yeah. And the idea of that is that every time you go on a shopping experience in Costco, You're like, God, this is so cheap. This is so amazing. And you almost forget the annual membership fee that you're paying all
Mm-hmm.
the time. And
Mm-hmm.
the annual membership fee even says, I will keep visiting this shop all the time because it's so cheap. Yeah. It
Mm-hmm.
almost encourages you because you feel like you've been invested into that. And then when you've
Mm-hmm.
got millions and millions and millions of members, now you're making billions of profit. That is, simply put, a business model. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now, is it defendable? Yeah, it's heavily defendable because everyone's got their membership card. And how many other membership cards do you have? Not many. So good that Amazon copied it, yeah, with Amazon Prime. Yeah, but again, that Costco card, you hold on to it. So that's what you're after. Here's the very key thing about a business model. It is actually unique, and it's actually a monopoly. So if you are not a monopoly, oh, there's my balloons again. I knew not. It's when I hold up these fingers, I'm able to create balloons magically. I have no idea. This is going to be
Learning
hilarious on
new
video.
things every day.
But I've never been able to do this before, so but it's a magic show. But so if your business model is not unique, so
Mm-hmm.
if you have a competitor who does the same thing as you, I don't know what to tell you. You don't have the right business model yet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's really weird to think of it that way. Yeah. Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you think like 60, 70 differing studios all doing roughly the same thing. Okay. None of them have a business model. Doesn't mean that you can't make profit, by the way. It just means that you're not going to be making the sort of profits you can make if you have a truly amazing business model. And if you have a truly amazing business model, you can substitute all the people and put new people in, and it will still work. But
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, if you don't have a business model, if you take all the people out, the chances are the business will fail. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been profitable with those people, but as soon as you remove them, that business will probably not be profitable and it fails. So business model is, for me, what it's all about as a startup founder.
So would you say, is it a correct statement to say that during those 10 years, while you were changing the strategy basically every single year, it was all little slight modifications to the
No,
business model? No.
no, not at all. See, the thing is, if your business model isn't working, small modifications aren't necessarily where you should go. So originally we were going to be a B2C company that did game shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then we become a B2B company which does instant win games. And then we become a B2B company which basically looks at table games and tries to win that market. And then we realize that we're being blocked getting into the lottery markets that we were after for reasons connected to our shareholder. And we go, we've got lots of casino customers, so maybe we should become a slots company. And this is the thing I would say is that a very large percentage of our revenues that are arriving in the main are not repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not from one year to another year, and we're just doing a little bit of iteration of our business model. You iterate a small amount when you have a successful business model. When you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a successful business model, it is perfectly acceptable to change quite a lot and make big changes, even
Mm-hmm.
do something totally and utterly different. And I think we sit in that category of really doing really quite different stuff. And I think even now we're doing, again, our next thing is to do something very, very different to what we've been doing previously, even to the extent that if our big thing works, we're prepared to almost turn off all the revenue of the previous stuff because we don't view that as a successful business model. So
Mm-hmm.
we just turn it all off. It's okay. Yeah. We're going to focus on the fact that we have a business model now because business models are monopolies and monopolies are very, very profitable. If you're not a monopoly, you're not very, very profitable. You're probably earning what you would earn in a corporate job or a little bit more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you just forced me to ask the question. I wanted to ask, initially I wanted to ask that on a later stage of the episode, but you just forced me. Uh,
Don't know what
so
I did, but if I can get more balloons in this show, I will.
if you are ready to give up, major part of of the income of the company and you just let it go just like that, and
Yeah.
if you're ready to believe uh, like that there is something more, even though you're in a pretty comfortable position right now, you still think there's something more. Couple of questions actually. First question: why do you do it? You as a Paul, you as a person, you as a human being. My impression is that you don't have to rush. You don't have to run. You don't have to put all the efforts. I mean, You could just stay wherever you are right now, get pretty decent money out of it, and basically spend time drinking wine and doing whatever. But yet you decide to take the risk and build something bigger, something better, and all that. Why?
Well, I'll put the obvious one out there, which is, of course, you can make a lot more money. I don't actually think that's, since we're talking about Paul as the person, that really is my motivation.
Hmm.
But it would be ludicrous to not say that money doesn't matter. Yeah. So I put
Sure.
it out there. For me, I always have this sort of phrase that came from a very early sci-fi in the 1950s called "monsters of the id." Yeah. And I think that's probably far more the truth of it. Ego is at the heart of it. For me, I'm a bit of a fatalist as a person. I'm
Hmm.
going to die in 40 years' time. I don't think my life will be extraordinary. I think I won't be remembered in 200 years' time. I'm not worried about that. It makes me quite hedonistic in my viewpoint that I want to make my life good and the people around me, my life's good.
Hmm.
But a big part of that is also to go, can I do it? Like, can I? Why not? And some of
Exactly.
that comes from my view of like, I think, this sounds, we're talking about ego, so why not be egotistical? I think my understanding of business is very high. I think, I really do not meet many people who have the same understanding of business that I do. That doesn't mean that I don't meet very successful business people. I do, because that's where the circles I roam in. But I'm built for this. And so my head is, go prove it. Can I build a studio that's worth 200, 300, 400 million?
Hmm.
Can I build a product that
Hmm.
really innovates this industry and has never existed before? And it's not to innovate the industry, and it's not to make it better for the players, and it's not because, yes, at the end of it I'll get a big check. Sure, I'm going to take the big check. Yeah,
Hmm.
yay, big check, like a big charity check. I'll be over the moon with it. Yeah. But the truth is, it's ego.
Wow. Thank you for the honest answer, because quite often I would be getting answers like, I want to change the world, I want to change the gambling industry and
How do you
all that.
change the world in gambling? Yeah, come on.
You
As
know,
as 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 a left wing person, and I am genuinely to the left wing of the world. Yeah, I sit there
mhm.
and go, we have massive inequality in the world. It's a massive problem. Do you think gambling's helping the big problem of the world? No, it's not. It's making the world worse. Yeah, but it's just life.
Well, you would be surprised how people are ready to explain that actually what they are doing is making people's lives better. But let's leave it with them. Okay, but do you have any goal? I mean, if you're gonna reach certain level, like being bigger than Playtech, Novomatic, what are all the big brands here? Is this the point where you're gonna say, all right, I've proven it. My ego is all over the moon now. I'm super happy. Or
I fulfilled my ego. I think that's
yeah.
the problem. That's why I think I call it monsters of the id. Yeah, because I'm, this comes from the original sci-fi on films that led to Star Trek and Star Wars.
Hmm.
Film called Forbidden Planet for the audience. Yeah, a film which today would be quite dry and slow, but it is the beginning of all science fiction. Yeah,
Hmm.
on television. And within that, the whole point, they have this alien race called the Krell, and the Krell kill themselves in the end by their constant chasing of improvement of their brain to
Hmm.
such an extent that they become, basically. They reach a point where they're so amazing they actually end up killing each other and they all die out, and this is where it comes monsters of the id, that
Hmm.
it is not necessarily a positive thing. It's a bad thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
because are you ever satisfied?
Hmm.
Probably not. Yeah, I mean they've got that song in Hamilton. Yeah, do you ever watch? You ever seen Hamilton the musical? There is
No.
a song. It's Hamilton. Obviously, Hamilton's a genius. Yeah, he's an absolute genius, and he has a song in it called "Satisfied," and the whole song about there's no limit to it, where there's no end goal. He's never ever really satisfied, because for him ego is such an enormous part of his internal psyche, that even though he ends up creating the treasury in the US, and he ends up creating federalism, and he ends up being this very enormous successful politician, he never is really satisfied.
Hmm.
And I think that is I think if I'm really honest about it, I'll probably never be satisfied. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we will, by the way, create a business like Nomadic or Playtech or like that. I think it's very difficult for a studio to do that today because I think control of distribution is very, very locked down and very, very difficult, even for a super successful studio to unlock. I
Mm-hmm.
think the reality is that you end up doing exactly what No Limit City did, or BTG does. That you essentially have to at some point sell yourself to one of the big owners of distribution because they can take your model and they can blow it up times three in a way you can't.
Let me get back to the ego thing, but because that's actually
I get looks so good. He's such an egotistical. We have the word bastard to add here. Yeah, but that would be there every day of the week. Yeah.
no, no, don't get me wrong. I think I'm a very same person. That's why I feel like I found my soulmate here. Because when you speak about never being satisfied, and when you speak about doing the things just because you can, that resonates a lot with me. Because
Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit different thing than you do, but the motivation is pretty similar. But one thing here, as far as I know, you founded the company with two other founders, so there are three of you.
Yeah. Helen and Dan. Yeah. So there's three
Right,
founders.
right. And speaking about ego, how do you are you all the same? Are you aligned with all those goals? And is vision quite well? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Let me put it differently. When I was forming my partnership with my current partner, with Alex, somebody told me that basically these kind of partnerships, basically these kind of ventures, they fail because of two reasons and two reasons only: lack of success and a lot of success.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, how does it look like for you? I mean, are you all like meeting once in a while, just realigning your goals and making sure everybody's looking the same direction, or is it just since you are CEO, you just run the show and they take the paychecks? Like, what's the deal?
I'm lucky to have them. Yeah. And I think honestly, to a very large extent, we have focused on three differing areas of the business.
Hmm.
And that sometimes can make us internally look distant from each other. But I think if truth be told, they've both been amazing. Yeah, and I'm not just saying that because we're on camera. I think they genuinely have been. I don't necessarily think I'm always the easiest person to work with. And to a certain extent, sometimes I just go, look, we're going to do this.
Hmm.
And I'm belligerent and sometimes aggressive, even in tone, that, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to, I don't care what anyone else thinks type thing. So, I think all of the things that you could describe can exist. I think I can sometimes be the CEO and, be a little bit too demanding and at the exact same time, we sometimes fall out with each other, maybe as a result of that, or people feel pressured in the same way that you might do in any partnership in life, whether it's business or whether it's personal. At the exact same time, I see two people who've always been on my side. Yeah.
Hmm.
And maybe it's always worth viewing it from that helicopter view.
Hmm.
Yeah. Same way you do with maybe your partner, same way you do with your children. If someone is always on my side, why would I want them not on my side? And
Hmm.
everything else is kind of doesn't matter. Yeah,
Hmm.
like it's the small. So yeah, do we argue? Do we disagree? Do we sometimes not get on with each other? Have we had at points where we've fallen out and people feel hurt? Yeah, of course. None of it matters. From the helicopter view, that these are people who are always on my side, and truthfully, I'm always on their side, and that's all it needs.
It doesn't happen that often, right?
No, I
So
know that's why I start with
yeah.
the what I feel like feels like a very cliched answer of
Hmm.
describing, oh, isn't it amazing to have these amazing co-founders? Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
but but when you understand it in the context of they're always on my side,
Hmm.
then obviously it's really easy at that point. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's really
Well,
easy to see why they're amazing.
looking from my experience, one of the very important checkpoints for checking if our visions with Alex, if they still align, there was a moment where we got offered to sell the company. I mean, sell majority of the shares in a company,
Yeah.
if not all of them. And that was the point where we had to sit down in one room and we had to talk. Okay, do we want to do it? I mean, if we do it, first of all, why? Is it for the money? Is it for getting rid of whatever we have at our hands at the moment? And the second thing that we were forced to think about was, okay, what next? I mean, what's going on? I mean, Create IT takes 99% of my time and clearly 100% of my brain
Yeah.
capacity for years now. And that was a surprisingly difficult conversation to try anticipate what we would do after actually the transaction was done. So what I'm trying to ask, do you talk about those things with your partners, or do you just go with the flow, and if it happens it happens, and we're gonna
Most of the
pursue?
time we go with the flow, and then
Mm,
the conversation will probably happen a little bit later. Yeah. But like, let's put it like this: I had two companies that ICE go, "Oh, we may be interested in buying you." Yeah.
mhm,
And I will mention that, and then I'm one of the founders was like, Paul, we wouldn't accept this price if this was the price you're selling at. Yeah. And a little bit of me goes like, look, just throw that away.
mhm,
Look, how many of these conversations have I had? Yeah, we've had six attempts to buy us in the 10 years that we've been going,
mhm,
probably about 40 conversations. Let's get
mhm,
real. How real is it going to get? In the main, when it comes to selling the company, the way it roughly works is those two can kind of outnumber me, but if I am able to convince one of them, the other one kind of has to come along for the ride. Yeah.
mhm.
So, but I would say it's very rarely done in that sort of, oh yeah, let's force the vote
Yeah,
type way.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
conversational. But we did have a company try to buy us 2 years ago, and that went a very long way. It went all the way to the point of essentially I shook the hand of the CEO and said, yeah, it's a done deal, and all the due diligence have been completed, all the contracts completed, and that deal collapsed last minute. Yeah.
Mhm,
And it was very clear in my head, in hindsight, that I was the one who was most relieved about that. And I think connected back to the ego conversation,
mhm,
because I had not really achieved what I was trying to achieve. And even though
mhm,
I was now selling and I was going to make a lot of money, and I was going to get a very senior job in a very large business,
mhm,
the reality is it didn't really align that well to what I really wanted to do myself. Yeah.
mhm.
And as that deal fell apart, I mean, there was a lot of very heated conversation about my view that we had been very distracted as a business and been focusing on too much and everything, and that, like, if we'd just been doing what I wanted us to do, then we would be in a much better position. I think that's a far simplistic way of putting it.
Mhm.
Like, life is complex and many, many things are happening at that point in time. But it was very clear I wanted to push the company in a very specific direction. And so, yes, I got more dictatorial in that moment. I think that had some big plus sides for us as a business, but it's also comes with some downsides when you put your foot down and go, look, we're going to do this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Particularly when we're talking about days after a deal collapse, that I'm going, fine, we're gonna go down this direction, and we're gonna do this. But when we started the business, we talk about this idea, and we were quite clear about this when we started the business. We talked about there are three models of decision making. Now, in my son's doing a GCSE at the moment, so they would call it like laissez-faire, autocratic, and dictatorial. Yeah, but we called it dictator, and we were very clear about who the dictator was. That was me. And democracy, well, that's, we want everyone to collaborate and work with each other. And then at the lower level, we have what we call dissent. And the whole idea of dissent is that we encourage employees to actively stand up against the the, the status quo, and to
Mhm.
stand up against the dictator, and for them to have no consequence for doing that. Yeah, that
Mhm.
it's not a bad thing for you to dissent, even if you're wrong. And
Mhm.
that we will try to encourage some form of dissent, because it's hard to dissent. Yeah, it's genuinely hard to do. So support it. Quite often, dissent is more right than you think. So you should be listening to it. So we've always had that sort of quite radical thought process as to how we're structured, with me being very actively called the dictator. Yeah. But yeah, if the sink is, if the way I've always described it is, if the ship is sinking,
Mhm.
and you're all about to drown, I mean, you don't want to rely on dissent. That's everyone running around doing their own thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to start forming committees and doing meetings and go, how do we do it?
Mm-hmm.
The captain of the ship takes control, and sometimes that's necessary in a business. And that's my worldview of it, even if it might be viewed negatively by some people sometimes.
You mentioned the situation where the ship sinks, and
Yeah.
for me that's quite obvious. Everybody looks one direction. The direction is captain. Captain has to be decisive, quick, in his actions and all that. But during the peacetime and during the, obviously you could say that every single day in a business is a struggle. Obviously, every single decision you're going to take might cost a lot in the future, obviously. But on a daily basis, do you dissent? Like, what kind of decisions or what kind of things do you dissent within the company to the people below you?
Me personally, like I don't think I have much of a day-to-day role. Yeah.
Okay.
When I do have a day-to-day role, it's normally like things I'd rather not do. Like, there's this problem in finance. There's this
Uh-huh.
problem in HR,
Hmm.
and I'd rather not
I
do
know.
these things. I view myself as not being part of the day-to-day. Maybe I'm wrong in that viewpoint, but I don't think I have the bandwidth to focus on that day-to-day. There's a lot of stuff going on all the time. The team, there's 100 people, they're the experts. My job is today is to create that business model. That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's my only job.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes describe it as, because I had a member of staff come to me about 2-3 years ago, and he said to me, Paul, you're a really bad manager. Yeah. And I thought this was kind of a surprise thing, because truthfully, my history with most of my staff that have worked for me, I'm putting this out on a video, so maybe loads of people will comment, oh, he's lying. But I think, truthfully, I've always had a lot of people say to me, oh, what a good manager you are. Yeah. That's been genuinely the main feedback I get. Reason why: I care about people. I want them to progress. I'm not particularly controlling, so I think a lot of people have really enjoyed working for me. And when I've worked in large corporates, I am surrounded by, one, a successful business model, so I don't have to worry about that. And two, I'm surrounded by things like secretaries, even, who check my mails and respond to them. When
Mm-hmm.
you're in a startup, all of that disappears. And my only job is to fix the biggest problem. So, I had this member of staff come to me and he says, you never talk to me. You never, you never help me in any way. And I'm like, well, are you the biggest problem in the company? Like, because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure you are at the moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you working on the biggest problem in the company?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're working on the biggest problem on the company.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the truth: if I don't go and fix the biggest problem in the company, then there is no company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the job I have to go do, even if it means that I end up being a bad manager and you feel I ignore you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to focus on the big problem, and the big problem for us was, one, the business model, but two, what is the product that matters? Yeah, we're a product business,
Mm-hmm.
and we're a product business that really didn't have a product that mattered to the customer. If you
Mm-hmm.
removed our products, would it matter? I always talk about what I call product clutter. Yeah. So, as a really good example of this, let's take phones. Yeah, like, do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android?
iPhone.
You have an iPhone. Yeah? Okay. So, there are 6 or 7 differing iPhones, and that's it. So nice and easy. Yeah.
Yep.
But now let's go to Android. How many models are there of Android?
Zillions. Yeah.
Zillions.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I start removing them, think anyone cares?
No.
If I got rid of half of them, half of the Android models that ever existed,
Mm-hmm.
and I do it even randomly, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I knock out the odd Samsung or two. Do you think anyone cares?
Not me, at
Right, so
least.
I can get rid of half the products and nobody cares. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what do you think that's like in slots? If I get rid
Mm-hmm.
of half the slots, do you think anyone cares?
Nah.
Okay, which half am I in? I'm probably in the half that doesn't care. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's not an acceptable position for me. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So the question then is, like, if that's where I am, don't add to the clutter, solve the clutter, come up
Mm-hmm.
with something, again, which is unique and a monopoly, and it, basically connected to business model. Because we're a product, has to be driven by product. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really bizarre way to think of it, and this is any industry.
Mm-hmm.
I pick phones because it's easy for me and you and the audience to understand that, but you could pick any product in the world and there is so much clutter. How many search engines can you name?
Couple, three, four.
A couple, three or four? I mean, that's pretty bad, isn't it, in comparison? Google created a monopoly. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because his product was superior in all sorts of ways as a
Mm-hmm.
business model because of AdWords, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and being a big part of that business model. So when
Mm-hmm.
you can create a monopoly, we know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
But an
Mm-hmm.
iPhone is pretty close to this. It has a monopoly of what I would call is high-end phones, yeah,
Yeah.
a particular type of monopoly. But as soon as we're going to Android, which is the mid-end and cheap end of the market in the main, you can see that there is Samsung are big, but they're no monopoly. As a result of this, look at how much less profit Samsung make on phones versus
Mm-hmm.
iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Create
Mm-hmm.
monopoly, you make way more profit.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple. And like we could have picked any product, but in slots, it's 100% true.
It is. Well, that's enough to look at the Aviator. They are different, and I agree with you. If you remove half of the slots on a market, nobody will notice. But if you remove Aviator, some will notice.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, as
yeah.
a good guide, I was with the owner of Aviator just before Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and he had just put his prices up. So he's just put his prices up to everyone. And one of the people you previously interviewed on this podcast decided to not take the Aviator at the higher price. Yeah. I won't mention in who it is because I'm sure it's confidential. Yeah. But someone you have interviewed on this podcast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They lasted 4 days. 4 days. 4 days later, Aviator is back on the site. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because unfortunately, Aviator is a must have for certain markets today. Not
Mm-hmm.
all markets. Could you survive without Aviator in the UK? Yeah, 100% you can. But there's some markets you just cannot survive without Aviator on because your customer will go somewhere else.
Right.
Aviator has genuinely created a monopoly for its product,
Yeah.
and tefore Scribe are producing unbelievable profits on a monthly basis.
Now you got me thinking who was there, but let me. I'm gonna ask later. I want to come back to one of the things that you said because what you actually said is very contrary to what I recently read in one of the books. You said that you take care internally within the company. You take care as a leader. You take care only about the most important matters, and
If I can.
if you can,
Yeah.
the biggest problems. I think you've put it that way, which means that you've delegated, consciously or not, you delegated not the things that you were bad at or good at, not the things that you wanted to delegate or not delegate. You delegated everything which is not a problem, which then again creates a situation where I mean, your time and your brain capacity
Yeah.
might not really be used in a best way, right? I mean, maybe there's somebody smarter in your company which would solve the problems that you are actually trying to solve right now.
It
Uh,
did, I didn't say solve by myself. That's probably the key point. Yeah.
right.
So even if I'm not the smartest person to solve that problem, and there are all sorts of problems where I'm totally dependent on other people's help to solve problems,
Hmm.
the idea that I would not be in that doesn't make any sense. Because if it is the fundamental thing which changes company performance,
Hmm.
then I should be in the room. I sometimes should be the quietest person in the room.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because maybe I know nothing about it. I grew up in IT, and IT we talk about having an inverted triangle. Yeah, so most business works with a standard triangle. Person at the top usually knows the most, usually has the most skills. People at the bottom know the least and have the least
Hmm.
skills. That
Hmm.
is not true in IT. In IT, it's the
Agreed.
absolute opposite, and we call it the inverted triangle. Yeah,
Hmm.
so the people at the bottom, they know the most and they have the most skills, and the person is at the top. I mean, he's actually the idiot. He's the one who's paid the most, but he's the one who knows the least at that point in time
Can't
because
agree
IT
more. Yeah.
scales failed. Yeah, and so having grown up in IT, deep understanding of that. Yeah,
Hmm.
that you as a leader, that doesn't mean you have to have the answer.
Hmm.
Should you still be in the biggest problem? 100% you should be. Yeah. Your job is to bring the people in that you can. Your job is to unite people around that big problem. Sometimes, yes, it will be me solving it. Sometimes it'll be someone else solving it. And I just happen to be in the room when it matters. Another
Hmm.
Hamilton reference. But yeah.
All right, all right, all right. All right. I'm trying because I have this rare opportunity of speaking to the guy who, just like me, you were with the company at the very beginning when you had no employees whatsoever. And
Yeah.
right now you have a pretty big structure where you can basically decide on your own what are the matters that you take care of, what you delegate, what you, as I said, consciously or unconsciously take care
Yeah.
of or don't. I just want to ask how well thought the process was. Because, well, again, let me tell you why I'm asking the question. My story is that I think at some point we grew up to 130 people ish. And at the very beginning, when we still had like 5, 10 people, the way I was delegating tasks to subordinates, it was kind of random. Like, hey, you just walking by, why don't you help me with that one? Why don't you take it off my shoulder? Till the moment, roughly around a year ago, I think, where I got to the point where I started creating those competence matrices, and I started creating all those corporate tools. Who does what's the process around it, what's the communication around the process, and all that. Frankly speaking, in my opinion, kind of killed the efficiency of the company. And
Yeah.
right now we are doing it a little bit differently. But what I'm trying to picture here is that the way you could delegate and the way you could build a structure could be either random and ad hoc, could be overly complicated, could be anything between that. And there's no good book about it. There's no good rule about it. There's nobody that will teach you. It's
Yeah.
it's all a matter of a gut feeling and all a matter of the personality actually you have. Um, so I wanted to ask you about your story here and how did you do it?
I think it part depends on what you're trying to create. So in my head, I think our company should be constantly on the edge of chaos and
Mhm.
constantly pulled back from it by people who are deeply organized and structurous. Yeah.
Mhm.
So two kind of opposing forces. Do I think this kind of structure is right for every company? No, not at all. Some companies should be really ordered and have competency matrix and be, that sort of way. Yeah. But do I think that's right for highly collaborative businesses? No, not at all.
Mhm.
Because one of the big issues is this: you write a competency matrix, and in it you think you know the competency of your staff, and you just don't.
Mhm.
It's ludicrous to think you do. Yeah, because people, I mean, like before we started this, yeah, you have the person who is helping you put together these podcasts, Cassia. Yeah, say how you say her name. Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah.
so she is hidden, but I'm going to bring her into this conversation for a second because she, while she was giving me the rules and all the things I have to follow, and I'm not allowed to swear, and I have to be controversial, and etc. etc. That's what I heard anyway. Or did she say I could swear? I don't know.
It
But
happens.
she pulled out a piece of artwork because I have kids' artwork on the back wall.
Mhm.
And you said, I've known you for years. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you said. And
Yeah.
I never knew you were that. Well, welcome to Competency Matrix, my friend. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right there, you have just in a single conversation discovered the very problem with competency matrix. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is that people are actually far more competent than any competency matrix can ever make out they are. And they
Mhm.
will always have a set of hidden skills you never knew that they had. And you need to be very careful that you don't stop them from bringing them into the workplace because you've told them or boxed them into something. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, my view in a collaborative organization is that you have to have this level of disorder where you're shoving people together. It requires very high vision. Yeah. This is what we're trying to achieve. Needs to be very, very clear. Sending man to the moon is how I normally call it. And then every single person works out how they can help send man to the moon. You're
Mhm.
not being so specific about their actual skills. That is
Mhm.
exactly how the way but that NASA got man to the moon. It had
Mhm.
an unbelievable amount of chaos in its structure to
Mhm.
do that. That doesn't mean it didn't have some structure, but an enormous amount of chaos in how they describe roles, how people could pitch into solving problems, how they could add to their differing skill sets to solve problems. And
Mhm.
deliberately so, because mainly in businesses, you have lots of wicked problems, and wicked problems need wicked solutions. And that means you're trying to bring in as much competency. There is a problem. When you're deeply chaotic, it can become very disorganized. People can get lost. It's not utopian, this, yeah? Like, it has downsides to it. That's, I always talk about, how do we chuck someone in it and like solve the mess and give us some
Mhm.
structure? And there are some areas like finance, as a good example, where finance is very structured. It has to be done on a schedule. It has to be done according to a set of rules. Yeah. And you need to bring someone in and you go, look, this area here, don't control the chaos. Don't make the chaos worse. So you said to me earlier on, maybe you have all these plans at the beginning with all the
Yeah.
exact budgets and, but now you probably have it as a mature business. What does mature businesses mean? You can lie to yourself, like, because that's what budgeting and forecasting predominantly is. Yeah, that doesn't mean that you can't have some sensibility around how costs work. Yeah, but you'd be quite surprised how companies lie to themselves and then do really strange things to hit budget, as if somehow the revenue side of that equation is fixed. No, the revenue side of that equation is completely non-fixed. You can overnight become 10 times bigger just because of something lucky or some change in your product. And how well does your budget work then? It falls apart the minute that you do that. So budgets only really work for businesses that are so unbelievably status quo that nothing changes year on year. I thought we were all trying to grow. Yeah. Like, so do budgets help us grow? Probably not. Yeah. Because you're constantly trying to chase new revenues, and new revenues are completely unpredictable. And so as a result of that, like what I'm a lot more interested in is what are called asymmetric payoffs. Yeah. An asymmetric payoff, sometimes called small bets or something like that. You're constantly trying to work out how do you spend as little money as possible to find out as much information as you can about the model that you're trying to get to, or the product that you're trying to release, or the growth area that you're trying to get into. Don't spend to a budget. Spend as little as you can. Budgets, people tend to spend them. Yeah, and that's why I'm very anti-budgets, even as a consequence. People will spend them even if they don't deliver the value.
Yeah.
And we're only interested in the value.
Yeah, and speaking of having a false sense of safety,
Yeah.
if I'm within the budget, everything is great. Well, it doesn't matter that the company is burning and the clients are running away. I'm happy with my budget, so I'm all happy. Yeah, I
Every
witnessed that.
business that is about to collapse is almost always entirely on budget.
Hmm.
That's the irony of it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, what happens is, you set a budget and you go into what I call managed decline. Yeah. Budgets are seem very good at managed decline, but truthfully, your business model is being destroyed, and your job now is to find a new business model. But the budget will often stop you from finding that new business model because the budget says that you should look after your existing business according to these particular rules. So if you're after managed decline, budgets are great. Yeah. But other than that, budgets are not brilliant.
I mean, it does resonate with me, and I think I really
Join
understand what
the
what you have in
pirates.
mind. But having that said, doesn't isn't it that this approach to the business in general, not just budgets, but basically managing whole entire business, doesn't that introduce a lot of micromanagement? Isn't that the vision is clear to everybody, of course, and everybody's as you said, let's land on the moon. But then again, if you don't have those boring boundaries, if you don't have those budgets, those goals, targets, however you want to call them, there is a big chance that people will start running in circles because they think they are getting to the point, but they are not. They have no benchmark. They have nothing to compare the performance with. Which means that if you want to make sure that everything is on the right track, you gotta talk to people more. And if you got like 10 people, that's okay. If you got 100 people, that could be difficult, right? With 500 people, that's impossible.
I'm not sure I agree. So,
Okay.
of course, you need to, I always talk about we're at the edge of chaos, and I said it's suitable for certain companies, and within that, you need some order. So, of course, you need to be able to do, management accounts, and you need to be able to tell you how much your performance is and what your costs are. And so you need some level of organization constantly. Yeah. But the question that we're asking ourselves here is this a good way of determining future things that you do? Yeah, that's the real question. So
Okay.
I've got my accounts. They're beautiful. Yeah, and my accounts are beautiful. They do very pretty accounts in my company.
Hmm.
Does this help me decide lots of things in the future? Now, there are some crucial things in that. How much cash do I have? How much free cash do I have? There are some useful things in it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But not that many. And so now what we then do is go, well, what things can we create in the future that might help us? So forecasts, KPIs, targets. I am very much of the school of thought, all of these are just a nonsense. Throw them in the bin. They're not worth the money that they're written on. And when you do succeed, so let's take someone like Pragmatic, for example, very successful slots company, as we know, and they do drive by numbers and they do drive by targets and they do, all of this. None of it still matters. Yeah, that's the truth. That's not why Pragmatic are winning. It isn't to do because some manager wrote down a target. That isn't it. Now, are some people temporarily motivated by targets? Yes, they are. Of course they are. And if you then attach salaries to them, are those people necessarily attracted to those targets? They are. But at the exact same time, that's also what leads to companies like Enron going enormously bankrupt, because targets have downsides as well as upsides. They're not all success. Yeah. It's the reason why we collapsed the banking system and had to bail out all the banks left, right, and center, because of all the targets and forecasts that we were doing. So the idea that this is just a winner with no cost is ludicrous to suggest, when most of us are all paying a lot more taxation as a result of this exact thinking. Yeah. So if you do not have targets and you do not have KPIs, what can you manage by not being a micromanager and trying to manage tasks, which I think is also bad? And it's so ridiculously obvious, and yet ironically I don't think it comes to most people's heads straight away, which is we start going, okay, if we're a service business, how do we be very brilliant at service? Now, I can tell you the very best service businesses aren't measuring themselves based on NPSs. They're measuring them based on how they treat their staff first, and then trying to tell their staff how they should treat their customers. Is that micromanagement? Maybe. Yeah. But they are sitting there, and it might go very micromanagement. I don't think this is 100% true, because I saw someone test this the other day. But I got told in Uniqlo that everyone is trained to pick everything up with two hands, because this is Japanese sign of respect. So any Uniqlo that you go to anywhere in the world, everyone holds it by two hands. Yeah. I then watched a video and the person didn't hold it by two hands, and I can't decide whether it's true and the person was just bad or not bad. Is that micromanagement? Yes, maybe. Maybe it is. I'm okay with that, because it's about how do we produce excellent service and how do we train excellent service in a service business. If you are a product business, of course, you need to have some excellent service as well. But if you're a product business, you need to have excellent product. So truthfully, what are we trying to do? We're going to try to get everybody who's connected to product thinking about good product. And there's this quote that I love. I'll get this quote slightly wrong, but it's a quote I'm obsessed with. And I say it to my staff all the time. Yeah. Which is like, it comes from a shipbuilder from the 19th century. And it says, we are going to build good ships. Yeah. That's it. Okay. Well, now we got the mission. Go build good ships. We already understand step one. At a profit if we can, at a loss if we must. Now, how do you think the budgeting world thinks about that?
They hate it.
They hate it. Why would you do that? Why would you run something at a loss? Yeah. It seems ludicrous, because the value side of the equation is worth far more than the cost side of the equation. This is deeply misunderstood by so many people who think this doesn't mean that we don't control our costs. We control our costs in all sorts of ways, but we don't control them by looking at every single expenditure and deciding is it acceptable or not acceptable. We encourage people to think frugally because money matters. We tell people to spend money like it's their own. Yeah. Is that micromanaging, to tell people to spend money like it's their own? No. But are we checking every expense off? No, we're not. Yeah, because we don't want that. The value side of the equation is worth more than the cost side of the equation. My goal is to work out how we get the value side of the equation solved. Because here's the truth. If you get the value, we talked about Google with their monopoly earlier on. Think when they're spending £20,000 on one of those beds you can sleep in during the day, do you think they got their costs under control? Do you think that's how Google was successful, is they controlled all their costs? You think they got tight budgets and they're making sure that their staff management costs are always the lowest possible for the employees that they can get? Do you think when they're feeding their staff food in the offices for free, that, some accountants sat there and gone, I don't know, this is going to break our budgets a little bit. No, because they don't care. The value side of the equation is more valuable than the cost side of the equation. And if you can get the right business model, you can make a fortune. That's always true for every business.
You got me thinking. Seriously, you got me thinking because I was heading with great idea a whole other direction, and actually I'm curious. Well, maybe I'll ask after actually the recording. I'm curious how much of all of that what you said is written in a company, and how much of that is a like a corporate culture. Let me put it that way. That everybody knows certain things.
I think we try or have tried in the past to write it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But people don't read. Yeah. That's the truth. Yeah.
Sure.
And again, I think truthfully, here's the irony of like me going back to like solve the big problem. The big problem today in our company isn't everybody knowing that. Yeah. There is a bit of it that we need to get out there. But do they need to know every single crazy thing that's in Paul's head as to how you run a business? I mean, they might learn more from this podcast than they know, from me. But there are things I can do to constantly encourage it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, first of all, what is our good ship?
Hmm.
I mean, at the very beginning, if you don't know what you're trying to do, like they're really that good ship. It's 2 words. It's one of the craziest. There's my balloons again. We haven't.
First
Anytime I
time.
do that, yeah, I've worked it out. I'm going to secretly trigger the balloons every now and then. But any time the conversation gets boring and too academic, we're going to fire the balloons out there just to keep the audience going. Yeah,
Kasha will love it. Yeah.
there's a lot held in that word "good," and there's a lot held in that word "ships." And there we are. There we are.
Yeah.
This I can learn that there must be a way I can turn it off as well, but I can't turn it off now. We're
Why?
just gonna
Why
go.
would you? I mean, it's awesome.
Why would I? It's that incredible. I'm bringing a whole new thing to your show. So there's a
Appreciate
lot in that word "good." So
it.
now let's go define it. What does
Hmm.
good mean? Yeah,
Hmm.
as a business, people should be thinking hard about what good means. And then 2 ships. It's
Hmm.
really clear. Not bloody boats.
Hmm.
Not anything else. We're a shipbuilder. We can
Hmm.
build ships. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the good thing is that good ships even means that there's enough in that definition to go to a customer and go, we build good ships. What do you think a good ship is? Yeah. Like there's so much in just 2 words.
Hmm.
And I would say that those 2 words in our company are quite understood by a lot of people today. And it has enormous impacts on their behaviors and what they do. Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
do they need to know? Paul thinks that a business should be living on the edge of chaos constantly, with people being organized to hold back it collapsing on that edge of chaos. No, come on, that's just academic nonsense. Yeah. Like, you're still stuck in the day to day of how do you do that? And that means like try to employ some people who are very organized in areas that are breaking too much. Yeah. It's much more practical.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that good ships thing is really a big part of it. Yeah. Everyone needs to know what that is, because then they can decide how they can contribute to it. Yeah. And some people won't be able to. That's just life. But lots of people will start contributing to it. And now, what are you trying to manage? You're trying to manage not budgets or that side of it. Now we're managing the value side of the equation. We're
Hmm.
not trying to be another crappy Android device. We're trying to be an iPhone. Yeah,
Hmm.
because that's where the excess profits are being produced, because the business model is correct for that in that market, or the most correct that exists.
Hmm.
That's what we're trying to manage. That's what we're trying to succeed at. And that's where my focus goes at the exact same time. Don't get me wrong, my finance team send me budgets, yeah, and I try to make sure that they don't have too much impact on the team, and the team don't think about them too much. But
Hmm.
every now and then, like we had a couple of really big winners this year, and it hurt our business quite a bit on the cash side.
Hmm.
And we will send out an alarm to the company going, cut all discretional spending. I mean, how that's not hard to understand, is it? Cut all discretional spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole company will just cut all discretional spending just like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So very direct conversation when needed, but most of the time we're trying to manage the value side of the equation. The cost side of the equation can look after itself really easily when you've got the value side right. The cost side is only a problem when you've got the value side wrong.
I think I do understand what the philosophy behind it, because what I think is quite hard to catch is that for you or me, the founders of the companies, we it doesn't really matter if we have like lots of spreadsheets, lots of budget meetings, a lot of budgets, a lot of predictions and all that. We naturally know what's important for the business and what's not, but
Yeah.
it's not entirely true for the people you hire.
Oh, 100%.
And you just made me realize it, that if you give them those tools like budgets, then they focus entirely on that, and they think they
Yeah.
did a right job basically by doing those Excel files. And having that, I think there's a term for that. I think in one of the episodes we already had similar kind of discussion, and the name for that was commander's intent. That this
Yeah,
is
commander's intent.
yeah
Fantastic idea. I
yeah
mean,
it's like
commander's intent is very much kind of
mhm
where I would stand as a
mhm
description of it.
mhm
Which obviously is used, the army structures itself in peacetime, and in war it realizes people die and you need to do something about this. And you need to give autonomy to soldiers to make
mhm
decisions.
mhm
And predominantly you want to describe the intent that you're after.
mhm
Here's the truth. As a CEO, you don't actually have that much power. That's the reality. You have an enormous quantity of influence. And the question is, how do you influence people as much as possible?
mhm
And the idea that you can do that through budgets is, to me, almost ludicrous. Yeah,
mhm mhm
because it's so micromanagement of how you run
True.
things. Yeah. And then people will spend a budget, and they do all the crazy things that I used to do in corporates. We haven't spent all of our money. Well, we better spend it in the last 2 weeks, because otherwise we won't get the same budget next year. I mean, that we all know, we all have done it. Yeah. Or you'll sit there and you won't give someone a pay rise because you haven't got the budget to do it, and then that person leaves, and then you employ someone on 20% more and they weren't as good.
Mhm
Like that.
mhm
That's budget thinking. Yeah.
mhm mhm
We don't want budget thinking. We want service thinking and product
yeah
thinking.
yeah
And
yeah
if you're a service company, you should be thinking very much about services. If you're a product company, product should be at the heart of what you're doing,
True.
and that's what you're trying to get right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very easy to forget about it, even for us founders,
It's
and even for us.
astonishingly easy to
Yeah,
forget about it.
yeah,
Yeah, because all these other things seem important.
yeah. All right, Paul. Here's my problem. We've already run out of time, and my problem is that my agenda still has like 20 questions to ask you about. Not really
It's
how
because
we
I
should.
talk too much.
No. I love it. I think we just need a separate episode, because I wanted to talk to you about the market itself. Actually, we are in iGaming, and actually, all we do is games and entertainment and all that. But I'm afraid that if we're gonna start those topics now, that's gonna be the longest episode ever. So I think we need another one to cover those things. So
Okay.
as for now, let me put the period here. Thank you a lot for your time. That was really opening the eyes. What you said, and you really got me thinking.
God.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. That was Paul Dolman-Darrall.